You're listening to the new media. You're listening to Mitchell Talks. Learn more at MitchellTalks.com and follow me, Scott Mitchell, on Twitter at MitchellTalks.
Have you ever heard of public-private partnerships? Sure you have. Well, how about pay-for-success public-private partnerships? Today you'll meet Ed Long, the founder of Cross-Sector Innovations. His company acts as a sort of matchmaker between the public and private sector to improve outcomes in the field of human services. One new public-private model is called Pay for Success. In a Pay for Success arrangement, private investors provide money up front to nonprofits to carry out a program. If the program works and saves taxpayer dollars, then the government will repay the investors. If it doesn't work or doesn't save taxpayer dollars, the government doesn't pay anything. Currently, there are only about 23 of these arrangements in the entire United States. They appear to be more efficient and cost-effective than old models. 2 of these programs are in Oklahoma, which makes our state a leader. In this Mitchell Talks series, you'll meet Ed Long, as well as the other partners in this arrangement, Lindsay Laird of the Arnall Family Foundation and Cherie Powell of the Department of Human Services. You'll learn why these arrangements work and how they can make certain Oklahoma families safer and more secure.
So, Cross-Sector Innovations has been engaged as an intermediary in the state, trying to bring together resources in the public and private sector to improve outcomes in Oklahoma. And one that's really taken off is a model called Pay for Success. The idea behind Pay for Success is that we bring in private investors to invest in evidence-based and promising programs that we know work, that we know have positive outcomes, and in the long run actually save taxpayer dollars. So it's an exciting time to be looking at new opportunities for bringing in new revenue, helping our agencies focus on prevention, early intervention, and bringing in new opportunities for private investment. So one of the examples we've had in the state recently, Oklahoma currently has 2 executed Pay for Success contracts. There are only 23 total, including those 2 in the country. So I'm excited to say Oklahoma's taking the lead in the nation right now as one of the front runners. And we're excited that the most recent executed contract has been with the Arnall Family Foundation and the Department of Human Services around foster care and kids at risk of abuse and neglect.
Lindsay Laird serves as program manager for child welfare initiatives at the Arnall Family Foundation, where she's responsible for developing engagement.
And since inception, we have been very interested in how can we expand more public-private partnerships in the state? How can we be a leader on the forefront of that effort? And being an outcomes-focused investor, when I learned about Pay for Success and how it's modeled, I thought this is perfect for us. This is perfect for us to learn more about and to be engaged in. So for this particular program within DHS, it's an existing program, and it had all the key elements. You have a reform-minded agency who wants to focus more on outcomes-based investments and being efficient with taxpayer dollars. So that's one thing. The next thing you had is a program that is showing cost savings. It is showing cost savings, but more importantly, it is safely keeping children out of foster care. And so you have two key things. And then finally, you have an independent evaluator looking at the success of this. So it's not DHS saying, hey, look at this great program, it's working. You have an independent evaluator in OU taking a critical look at several key metrics. And when I looked at those key things, I thought, this is ripe for Pay for Success. All you need is a private investor who's willing to put the money up to expand the program, to reach more children and families. And through the cost savings yielded by the state, they will be making success payments back to the foundation so we can reinvest in the next program.
Cherie Powell is Communications and Community Relations Director at the Department of Human Services.
This model, Intensive Safety Services, was a program we began in 2015, and we really wanted to demonstrate to the federal government how we could use our foster care money more flexibly and not just use it to pay for kids once we brought them into foster care. We wanted to show that we could keep kids safe and still help their families and keep them at home with their families safely. And so that's what this project began as. It's called Intensive Safety Services. It is something that is working with high-risk families. So these are families that would normally have circumstances in their homes where we would have to recommend the children be placed in DHS custody to keep them safe and put them in another environment in foster care. But this allows us to take some very, very intensive services directly to the home with safety monitors, with master's level therapists, all up in the family's business for at least 10 hours a week or more, and working with them on domestic violence issues, substance abuse issues, parenting classes, anger management, all types of issues like that right there in the home, so the child does not have to leave. But there still are a lot of eyes on children to ensure their safety. Probably one of our most typical cases, and this is something of most of our child abuse cases. They all have some common factors. They have substance abuse, they have domestic violence, and usually some levels of mental illness, whether it's treated or untreated. So it could be a matter of parents abusing substances, fighting with one another, putting the kids at risk. It would not be a shocking or heinous form of child abuse. That would not qualify for this type of program. But this would be something where the environment and the parents are at such high risk that we normally would not leave a child in that environment. But this allows us to do that safely by bringing all of those safety services into the home.
What is the incentive for folks like the Arnall Foundation and others to want to engage in specifically a pay-for-success type arrangement? What's been exciting about this, as I said, there's only 23 executed contracts in the country and fewer than 100 in the world, so it's relatively new. It started back in the UK around 2010 and just sort of taking off in the United States. What's exciting about this is I've visited with individuals in the private sector who have dollars to invest in social impact, want to do good, want to make a difference. And a number of them have said, I would be willing just to grant those dollars, like a typical sort of grant, provide those dollars because I know they're going to good use and they're going to help someone. Where this model comes into play is it brings in other types of investors, such as investment bankers, private equity firms, individuals of high net worth who do want to contribute dollars, but have an opportunity not only to earn that principal back, but perhaps 3 to 5% return back that they can then turn back into other investments and social impact. So it's good for everyone because it allows us to have more resources to continue to invest in these types of programs. But that is where it's a bit different. So it is actually an investment, not a typical grant that we would provide to a nonprofit or a service provider and wait for a report back. We're actually waiting to see if we're going to get some of that money repaid back to the investor so we can reinvest. So I think that's an important piece of it. On the public side, what I think is different about this, we've talked for a long time about performance, pay for performance, performance-based contracting. That does happen and does exist. I would say that to some degree, while I certainly am for that model, it is not all inclusive. When we look at our nonprofits around the state, thousands of nonprofits, not all of our nonprofits are able to enter into a pay for performance contract and float that budget and cover the expenses for 9 months or a year before they get paid. And then if they don't achieve the outcomes in, say, a year or so, then they don't get paid at all. And so that puts our nonprofit community at risk, which can be fragile already. And so what I like about this model is it provides the upfront capital from the private investors right away to those service providers, and they're at no risk. And so they're closely monitored. They're held accountable to the metrics on an ongoing basis by the investor, by the intermediary, by the state agency or municipal government if it's at the local level. But they're given those dollars up front, so they're not having to figure out how can we possibly do this and wait a year and be able to cover those expenses.
Coming up in part 2, how the public-private partnership is allowing for significant, measurable successes in keeping at-risk families together and safe.
You're listening to the new media, the MitchellTalks Network. Learn more at MitchellTalks.com and follow me, Scott Mitchell, on Twitter @MitchellTalks.